Hello and welcome to the Inner Game of Entrepreneurship podcast. I'm your host, Sarah, and today I am so excited for the conversation that we are about to have with my guest, Riana Malia. Riana is an identity architect for high-achieving women and a sought-after speaker and creator of the Clear to Create method. She works with accomplished, emotionally intelligent women who have done so much right. They've raised families, built careers, supported others, and held it all together. But behind the strength and success is often a quiet question. Why is love, the one thing I long for, still the one thing I can't seem to get right? Through her Clear to Create method and quantum pattern protocol, she helps high-performing women clear emotional residue, rewire subconscious patterns, and realign with the life, love, and legacy they are truly meant for. Riana, welcome to the show.
Thank you. So happy to be here.
I'm so excited to talk with you. We were chatting a little bit before we started, and I was letting you know that we talk a lot on this show about subconscious patterns. We talk about archetypes and identity. We talk a lot about how the patterns that show up in our romantic relationships show up in business. And you were sharing a little bit with me about what you see high-achieving women in particular struggle with when it comes to relationships. So drop us in. What are some of the overarching themes that you see in your clients?
So, there's so many, right? But if we're looking at repeating patterns, how many times do you hear somebody say, I don't know, I've done all this therapy, I've done all this work, and what's wrong with me? I keep ending up in the same relationship over and over again. Or I keep marrying the same person. Or I keep ending up in a professional situation where there's conflict, or in friendships, or in health, or in wealth, all the things. And so what's really critical to understand is there's a reason for that. And oftentimes people don't understand the way that the mind is wired and what's going on. So if we think about the fact that every day we think somewhere between 70 and 85,000 thoughts, and 90% of those thoughts are recycled. They are the same thoughts that we thought yesterday and the day before, in the middle of the night, and all the things. The problem with that is 75% of those thoughts are negative. And I get a lot of pushback because a lot of my clients, again, they're like, oh no, I am so good on mindset. Like, I'm so clear. Like, I am not allowing this and I'm not allowing this. And I don't ever want to be in another relationship where I don't feel adored and valued, or I don't want to be in another relationship where I don't feel safe because I can't trust what you're saying, or I don't want to be in this financial position again, or I don't want to be in this partnership where I just, I'm constantly dismissed. I don't. The problem with that is that the unconscious mind and the universe, it can't hear the qualifying don't. It just knows what you're focused on. So when we're focused on all the things we don't want, that's what continues to show up. And it's important to understand like the difference, right? So if you think about your body, everything from the neck up is our conscious mind. It is our critical faculties. It's everything that we know. It's our goal setter. We use it all day long, and it's 10%, which means the rest of our body, the other 90%, is our unconscious mind. So if our conscious is our goal setter, then the unconscious is the goal getter. That's where the magic happens. That's the operating system. But most importantly, it's also the literal library of everything you've ever experienced in your life. Everything you've ever felt, anything that's been said to you, it's stored at a cellular level in the body, right? So we know memory is cellular. And we think about it being in the brain and it lives in the circuitry, but it's cellular. So it's all here. And when it's not released properly, we see things like anxiety, depression, overwhelm, illness, injury, autoimmune disorders, all of those things start to pop up. So along those lines of repeating patterns, I also see a lot of women that are in this stage of life where maybe they're transitioning, maybe there's been a divorce, or they're empty nesting, or they're pivoting in their business, or they're starting a business, or they're changing it. And there's this sense of not being able to trust yourself because we have all this evidence, right? And it comes to a point where we're like, well, I don't know. I thought I knew, and look how that turned out. So when we look at the methodology of the Clear to Create, and the reason why that came to be is because, my tagline, for as long as I can remember, has always been your very best life. Because whether we have known each other for decades or minutes, I want you to live your version of your very best life. And that is different for every single one of us. But you can't just go from old childhood trauma and old story and old pain and old stuff to just living your very best life, right? It doesn't work that way. So we have to clear before we can create. Otherwise, it's just building on top of the old junk. And so we have to clear the story. to create the life. So many people say, I want a different story. Then you have to stop telling the old one, right? And we have to clear the cycles to create that confidence. And we have to clear the patterns to create the partnerships. We want genuine, aligned partnerships, romantically, professionally, personally. But when we bring all the same old patterns in, we don't get those. We just get more of the same. And we have to clear the resentment to create the results. So many high achieving women almost get there. They almost get what they want. They never quite do. And we got to clear the loss to create the love.
That's beautiful. So wait, at the end, I heard you say we have to clear this thing, this thing, this thing, this thing. What are the things again? What are the things we're clearing?
So we're going to clear the story to create the life. We're going to clear the cycles to create the confidence. We're going to clear the patterns to create the partnerships. We're going to clear the resentment to create the results. And we're going to clear the loss to create the love.
That's so beautiful. One of the things that I thought of as you were sharing is 10 years ago is when I moved from the Bay Area to LA. And I had lived in the Bay Area my entire life, right? So 30 something years, I lived all in one place and I knew all these people. And one of the reasons I wanted to leave is that even if you live in a city, it becomes a small town when you live anywhere for more than 30 years. And I was like, I can't go anywhere. I can't go to the grocery store. I can't go to a restaurant. I can't go anywhere without running into someone who knows me from a particular time in my life, and they want me to still be the version of me that I was when they knew me. So I'm running into people from when I was a teenager, and they want me to be like that. I'm running into people I knew in college, and they want me to be like that. And I'm running into people I knew in my early 20s, and they want me to be like that. And I didn't feel at a certain point, I felt trapped, and I didn't want to go anywhere. And I was like, oh, I don't feel free to dictate who I am on my terms today because everyone wants me to still be in the story they know me from. And that was really revelatory because I had never lived anywhere else. And I was like, whoa, when I come to LA, no one will know me, which means no one knows any of my losses. No one knows any of my failures. Nobody knows any of my exes. Nobody know, right? Like I could be anybody.
Yeah.
And it was the first time I had really thought about how I brought my own old stories and my old pain into relationships. And I was really thinking about, oh, I'll meet someone and I start to get to know them. And I feel like I have to tell them all these things about my life for context. But a lot of the things I will tell them are negative things that have happened. And I'm like, well, that's only true if the context I want them to hold me in is the context of those negative things that happened to me. If I don't want them to hold me in that context, I don't need to tell those stories. I could just stop telling them to people. Or I could wait to tell them until way, way longer. You know, I just recently was talking to a friend. We've been friends for almost 10 years. And I shared something about my teenage years. And he was like, wait, I never knew that about you. And I was like, oh, yeah, you know, it's not particularly relevant to my life anymore. So I don't really talk about it. But it was just such an aha moment for me that like by choosing to go to a new place, I was realizing I'm actually at a great point to choose to become an entirely new person. And if I want everyone I meet to hold me in the context of the person I know myself to be now, I just don't have to divulge any information about myself I don't want to divulge. I don't need to tell people old sad stories about me. And it was so freeing to realize that I had that opportunity. I don't know. It's just such a beautiful thing when we recognize that like, we really don't have to share anything we don't want to share about ourselves if we want to shape how people relate to us.
Absolutely. And I love that analogy because this work allows you to do that without having to relocate.
Yeah.
But you know, like, so it comes up a lot because let's use a divorce or the end of a significant relationship as an example. And people who love you, they want to check on you and they want to make sure you're okay. And so like if I have clients that are in that situation, at a certain point, you kind of have a visceral reaction. Like you kind of want to be done talking about it. And you know it's coming from a place of love and support. But this is a really beautiful boundary to be able to set and say, hey, listen, I know that you love me and you're checking in and like, I fully get that. And I don't want to talk about my divorce anymore. I don't need to talk about my ex-husband and what happened. And I know you're coming from a place of love, but all that does is just, you know, just reinstalls all of that for me. So from here on out, can we just talk about like what's going on now and future and look ahead? Because people need to be told that and almost given permission to quit asking about the old traumatic stuff or whatever's going on, because all that does is it pulls you back in. And then every time you tell the story, all of that cellular memory, it reactivates as though it's reliving it over and over and over again. So as you pointed out, like those versions of us and so many women in, entrepreneurs in whatever space we're in, it's like, they're like, I've done all this work, right? And then you have progress and you have all of this clarity and aha moments. And then something happens and it takes us back to that old way of responding or being triggered or thinking. And the reason for that is if you're going to blow out old neurology and strategy and behavior, you have to replace it. And that's probably one of the biggest missing pieces in this, in this work in industry in general, is that people want to give you all of this theory and give you this awareness and this clarity, but then you don't get the skills to go with the knowledge. You don't replace the neurology and the behavior and the strategy. And that's really where people get stuck in an operating system from 10 or 20 or 30 years ago. It's not aligned with who you are today. And so again, like if we think about our phones, right? If we don't update the operating system, all the apps crash, they quit working. It's the same for us internally. So a lot of times it's just literally your nervous system, your operating system is running on a version of you that is no longer you.
Absolutely. Talk to me about romantic relationships in particular. When women are coming to you and they're like, I'm so successful in business, I'm so successful in all of these other areas of my life, but in romantic relationships in particular, I keep finding myself not getting what I want or in the same patterns. What do you see happening for people there?
So there's a few things. Number one, it's probably, again, if we're always talking about how all men are like this, or all the men that I seem to attract are whatever, fill in the blank, you literally will get served that because it's what you're ordering. It's like, jumping in the car and we put an address in the nav system or in Google Maps and I have zero sense of direction. So I have to use it all the time. But like we put in an address and it tells us where to go. It is the same thing with our unconscious mind. When we're talking about that all the men are this or all the people that I'm interested in are this, we're giving that direction to be focused on that. And that's what we look for because we get to be right. And whatever we're focusing on, that's what we see. So that's part of it. The other part of it is, again, women that are high performing they're performative, right? And they're like, okay, I'm accomplished. I get shit done. I'm focused on this. I'm doing this. But love is not like getting your next CEO position or your next VP position or your next client or whatever it is. It's not about performing. You don't need to perform. There's nothing wrong with you. You're not broken. You're just ready. You're ready for something different. And so rather than it being like, oh, I can just be better. I can do better. I'm going to do more things to attract the love. All that does is just puts you in, the spinning of the same. So rather than that, let's take a step back and go, okay, first of all, when I ask you, like, what is it that you really want? Like on the other side of this, what are you doing or not doing differently than you're doing or not doing right now? What are your values? What are your non-negotiables? What are your desires? Oftentimes that will leave them speechless and maybe some tears, because without that level of clarity, it's just like walking into a restaurant and saying, hey, I want a beverage, a salad, a side, and some protein. And they're like, cool. Here's an iced tea and a pork chop and some roasted carrots and a Caesar salad. And you got exactly what you ordered, 100%. But what you wanted was a glass of bubbles and a piece of salmon and some roasted asparagus and an arugula salad with fresh figs and goat cheese.
What I'm thinking as I'm listening is about the difference emotionally between wanting love and wanting to be chosen. And I think that so often for high achievers, right, if we are basing all of our worth on getting a gold star, on getting approval, on being told we're the best, on getting the job, on getting the gig, on getting the high ticket client, we are constantly courting being chosen, right? I want this client to choose me. I want this company to choose me. I want this, like, my boss to choose me for the promotion. Everything is like I'm validating myself on being the best, being recognized as the best, and being chosen. That is a very different feeling than being loved for who you are. And I think so many of us have wounds around not being chosen, from childhood, right? And that can be as simple as I had a parent who worked on the road, right? Because as a kid, your body doesn't interpret that any different as rejection. Parent died, parent went to jail, parent provides for me physically, but isn't emotionally attuned. There's all these ways that we can interpret as little kids. I was not chosen. I was left. And then we go into our adult relationships and we're like, I want someone to pick me. I want someone to choose me. I want someone to say I'm the best. And then you go into relationships performing to be chosen, which is totally different than evaluating, do I like you? Do you set my nervous system at ease? Do we have things in common? Do we like spending time together? It's a totally different approach and criteria, but we don't always know what is the subconscious need I'm looking to get met here.
Yes. And that's so important. That's 1,000% when I look back at my life and, as a child, grew up a single mom. We lived in Minnesota. We were born in Maui. My parents met, married, had me, divorced when I was 2. So my father went to California. My mom and I went back to Minnesota. I had the most incredible grandparents. God bless you, Bumpy and Grammy, my anchors. But, dad wasn't around. He had another family, totally not chosen. I went off to college. He said, listen, I never helped your mom. I never really helped you. I'm going to pay for your room and board for freshman year. I'm like, that's awesome. Get there, get settled in, 18 years old, get a call 2 months in saying, hey, your bill was never paid and you're maxed on student loans. So what do I do at 18? I'm like, okay, clearly not as important as the other family, not chosen. So I had to move out of the dorm. I got 3 jobs. I rented a 5-bedroom house and filled the other 4 bedrooms. And, again, evidence that there's probably, why don't you love me or keep your promise? And then I got married at the very old age of 23. 10 out of 10, do not recommend. You're a baby. Like my daughter's going to turn 22 next month. She's a baby. But I was certain that I was going to be this old cat lady, single friend, like nobody was going to love me. To the point that he actually called off the engagement at one point, and I was so insistent and just like persistent that that was not the right decision. And so I convinced him basically, like all relationships have stuff that's hard and that's silly to think that, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, but I had that. I wasn't, worthy of love, or something's wrong with me. I'm inherently broken. And so it was a very lonely marriage. And we had our miracle child. And when she was 6, we finally separated. But again, like it turned into this thing that felt really calm and peaceful to very volatile. And then this understanding that there had been somebody else for a long time. And again, not chosen. Fast forward 3 years and now Maddie's 9 and we're doing our thing. And we live in this tiny little cottage with our horses and our chickens and this little pond that we would dye blue in the summer. So it looked like the ocean. And, it was a lot, but it was good. And then my dad had been a little bit more in our life, the last few years. And he says, listen, I think it's the perfect time. You guys should move to California and take over family business and just come and get out of this cold weather. Cause I am an island baby. I am not made for Minnesota. And I was like, well, my mom had a surgery and she did nails for a living and they nicked a nerve when they were fixing her neck and she couldn't use her arm for a long time. So obviously she couldn't really work. So I was helping care for her. And I said, I'm not leaving my mom. I'm not leaving the horses. And I'm not coming on a whim because you have a lot of big grandiose ideas, but they don't really, come to fruition. And I moved around a lot as a child and I am not going to do that to Maddie. I will disrupt her life only once. And he said, I promise you, here, you can go into the bank account. All the capital is there. You can take it. You can run it. You can make it your own. It's going to be amazing. So against every fiber in my body that was screaming at me, don't do this. And my best girlfriends that were like my chosen family begging me not to go because we can't trust him. I wanted the fantasy. So I packed up my mom, my daughter, 3 cats and 2 horses, and we moved to California. And I didn't know anybody here. So we get here and the first while was magical, right? He had a barn built for the horses and, we were having family dinners and it was great. And I had a pit in my stomach that said something was wrong, but I didn't know what it was. And I thought maybe I'm just being hypersensitive and this is all new and I'm just, I'm acclimating. And we'd been there about 6 months or so. And I'll never forget because it was December 1st, Maddie's 9th birthday or 10th birthday was the day before. And I'm in the studio and this guy had come to pick up a bunch of mailers who used to work there. And he was taking them for me to the post office. And I heard this noise and I kind of peeked around the corner because we were in the back, and I see all of these men coming at me, guns drawn, and they put me in handcuffs. And Maddie's supposed to be home in like 20 minutes with my mom and a new little girlfriend from school for the first time. And I have no idea what's going on. And I'm like, I need to call my mom and tell her not to come here. And they're like, no, you're not calling anybody. And long story short, they go into this whole thing. They've been investigating and there was potentially illegal activity going on. And I found myself in the middle of a DEA investigation. So now, what the F do I do? Now I have no business. Everything's frozen for now, and maybe in a year you can talk to us about it. I had this magical fantasy of this relationship with my father that I'd always wanted, not happening. And now I'm here in a place where I don't know anybody, dealing with something that is beyond anything I've ever imagined, like a horrible, bad Lifetime movie. And now I have to make another decision. Do I take us back to Minnesota and go back into our life there, which we could have reincorporated in a heartbeat, minus probably the horses, or do I keep my promise and break that generational not keeping promises from parents and not doing what it takes to put them first? So we stayed, and several $100,000 in debt later and a whole bunch of stuff, but here we are. And on the other side of that and dealing with all of that, I did what we're all told to do, right? Just like after my divorce. You talk about it in therapy. You talk about it with your girlfriends. You read the books. You do the journaling. And again, it's all beneficial, but it doesn't actually heal you. And it keeps you stuck in that old story. So in that process of then going back to therapy and just realizing that I was just consumed by either heartbreak and sadness, like, how could you do this to us? Or ragefully angry. And there's no joy. There's no possibility. There's no moving forward. And then also in the midst of that, choosing a relationship that was abusive, not physically, but in every other way, and knowing from the very first moment that it was wrong, but again, feeling like, what if this is it? And not trusting myself and not knowing how to trust myself. So it took me a long time to get out of it, but it was then that I realized that doing things the same way wasn't going to solve the problem. And so it's kind of the first time that I found something that became the basis of then my life's work, because it was just a matter of weeks where there was just parts of me that I didn't recognize anymore in the best way. And I fully forgave my father. Now, that doesn't mean he gets a seat at the table. I haven't spoken to him in years. I don't answer the phone calls. He doesn't get access to us. But real alchemical forgiveness is not about them anyway. It's about, I'm drinking poison and I want you to die. And that's not how it works. It's just killing me. So we're able to say, you know what? It's not mine to carry. I'm not going to let what you did any longer control my thoughts, my feelings, my decisions, my behavior. And I'm going to take it from that defining me to that refining me. And that's when you get just to move from standing in your story, the tears, the drama, you tell the story the same way over and over again, it just activates you, to being able to stand on your story and understand that's part of you, but it doesn't define you. It's not your identity. And so that's what brought us here today, which, back to your point, 90% of who we are, we pick up between 0 and 7. There's a lot of decisions made by, baby us, 5-year-old us, 6-year-old us. Would we let 5-year-olds make decisions for us? No, but that's what's running the old operating system.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. When we start to make the transition, right? Because what I'm really hearing, right, this idea about standing in your story versus standing on your story, that idea that I was sharing earlier about I'm telling people this stuff because I want them to have context for me, but it's really because I actually want them to hold me in the context of my pain, right? I'm telling you this tragic thing that happened to me because I want you to think of me as delicate, or I want you to think of me as a survivor. I want you to think of me as someone who overcame this really hard thing, or I want you to know all of these ways I've been done wrong. I want to pull you into my experience of the story, which is a very different situation than when you're saying doing professional speaking where you're like, I am in a place where I can tell this story about my life and draw the lesson from it or explain how this situation, the events of this situation forged me or laid the groundwork for me to have this new experience that brought me here is a very different place to be. And I'm hearing this idea of like, we're replacing the operating system to be able to do that, right? Like I am no longer showing up as an activated 7-year-old.
Mm-hmm.
I'm showing up as my adult self who has the ability to editorialize the story, that has the distance, that has the perspective, and that the space in between showing up as the wounded child and showing up in your adult self is that work of replacing the operating system, is like learning new ways to function, but not just learning, because I do think, and we kind of touched on this, one of the downsides, to talk therapy, to being a highly verbal person and to being a very intelligent person, is being able to intellectually explain something, but you're not emotionally on a new wavelength. Your body isn't in a new place. Your nervous system isn't in a new place. You can just tell the story. You can explain your experience. I think I was like in my 30s before I understood that being able to explain my experience and feel my feelings were not the same thing. It's like, what do you think? I've done so much talk therapy. I'm so good at explaining my perspective on what's happened.
Yes.
It's not the same as like doing somatic work, experiencing things in your body, shifting things on a nervous system level, creating a new body state so that every situation you encounter doesn't re-pull your body back into that old space, that old reaction. So what are some of the things that or some of the tools that you use when you're working with people on shifting at that state level, that new operating system level, so that they can stop not just intellectually identifying with their old story, but stop being, I hate to use the word triggered incorrectly, but that is frequently what's happening, is that you're encountering something in the present that is bringing up a historical reaction. So it's accurate. You are triggered if you are responding like a 7-year-old.
It's not really a better one yet.
Yeah, look, I understand that people use it incorrectly on the internet all the time. We're using it accurately. This is what's happening, because if you are having an outsized or historical reaction to something in the present, that is what being triggered is. If I am hysterical about a business situation, it's probably because I am being activated from something in the past, not because the current situation for my adult self is unmanageable most of the time.
Yes. So love that. Of the many things that I use in my work, quantum time release is the answer to what you just asked me about. So this is a multidimensional technique that's been used for hundreds, probably thousands of years. And there's elements to it that include, some timeline work and some alchemical forgiveness and transmuting that old negative heavy weight that has stored in our body, and be able to future pace and create new relationships with those emotions going forward, but without going back into any conscious memory of the thing that caused the problem in the first place. So if you think about every one of those negative emotions, anger, sadness, fear, guilt, shame, and then any and all of the, limiting beliefs and limiting decisions that we have, concocted from our past trauma or whatever. And every single time we have a significant emotional experience with anger, a marble goes on that ribbon. Sadness, fear, guilt, shame, right? They all have their own ribbons. And so today, to your point, if something happens and makes you angry, it's not so much about the today, it's the 30, 40, 50, 60 years of marbles behind it. It's the gestalt, right? It's that sum that's greater than the parts. That's the charge that's being held in our bodies right now. So in quantum time release, we release in that order, one at a time, and it's a completely unconscious process. No, you're not unconscious. You're just very chill and cozy wherever you are. But we're tapping in to that other 90%, because when we keep doing things the same way, I'm going to outthink it. I'm going to read another book. I'm going to unpack another whatever therapy, blah, blah, blah. It's like just plucking the top off the weeds, right? They're going to grow right back. So by using this and actually, getting to the root cause, which nobody has conscious memory of, and clearing from there, then it's a completely different experience, because you cannot solve a problem with the same mind that created it. It's impossible. So we have to do it differently. So then you could have this experience where I then ask you in between each release, I'll say, okay, now I actually want you to go back to a very specific event in the past where that emotion used to be a problem. And I want you to check and see if it still has a charge. So you may realize it does not. And this is where people just light up and they're like, whoa, if you would have asked me about that 2.5 hours ago, I would have been right in it. I would have had a pit in my stomach. My heart would be racing. My hands would be clammy and I would just be all in the story. And the charge is gone. And that's the beauty of releasing at this level and not reinstalling the trauma and the pain and all the nonsense. We actually get to clear it because then when you release all of that, now you have room for what's meant for you and what's next, right? It's like our closets are full of crap and old clothes. There's no room for anything new. A few weeks ago, I cleaned out my pantry, which had been like a year overdue. And at 49 with, a little perimenopause and a little ADD and all the things, like I love organized, but also things can pile up around me. And it was just like, all right, I'm doing it. I'm taking everything out. And I put it all over the kitchen and I cleaned it and then I threw away expired stuff and half open boxes of orzo and whatever. I just threw all that stuff away and then I put it all back and it felt like Christmas. And it was like every time I would open the pantry, it would make me giddy. But the point is, it's the same for us. There's all this expired stuff here, half cooked stuff, half open boxes. And if we don't get rid of it, there's no room for us to actually have the life and the love that we really desire.
Yeah, I love that. And how long does that process take, the quantum time release? Is that something it's like a single session? Is it several sessions? Like, how does that work?
So, it's 111. Quantum time release is part of the work, right? So the framework of the work is 3 phases. It's clear, create, and claim. And the quantum time release falls into that clearing where we do that full dysfunction detox. And that session is usually around 3 hours. So the intensive in and of itself, it's about 8 sessions. It's very fast. I do say though, in all transparency, it typically doesn't ever happen in 8 sessions because inevitably there's going to be a time or two where I have something planned and you come to the call and it's clear you need something else and we're going to set that aside and take care of you and whatever that is. But, 8 to 10 sessions, this work is not something that takes years and months of, going back and, doing all the things that it's exhausting. But yeah, QTR is a part of the work, but it's in 3 hours, it changes your life. And then there's some integration and, your body actually releases the physiological matter of that negative energy. And so over those 72 hours, sometimes people are tired. Sometimes people have crazy energy. Like sometimes it fluctuates between both. Creative juices start flowing, downloads come, ideas happen. It's just such a huge shift.
Amazing. And so then where do you go from there once you've cleared that stuff with people?
So once we have to get clear on who you are, what you want. Then we get to clear it all, right? We get to do that dysfunction detox, get rid of the stuff that's not yours to carry anymore, maybe never was. And then we start to understand, who are you now? Like, who are you? Stripped away from the noise and the conditioning and the society stuff and the old trauma. Like, who are you now? And then we get to move into the create phase, right? Where we're actually kind of stepping into the activation of who you are now. And then we get to that middle place that we talked about before, which, is essentially, I call it habits, but it's reinstalling all of the stuff that we blew out when we got rid of all the dysfunction. So it's actually recreating new neurology and strategy and behavior. And when I say strategy, sometimes people think they go to this really high level logistics, but we have a strategy for everything. We have a strategy for love, for sex, for grocery shopping, for illness, for wellness, for all of it. It's how the brain knows what to do next. Some of those strategies are amazing, and a lot of them are super dysfunctional, and they keep us stuck. So we have to replace that. And then now that we've gotten clear, we've cleared all of that out, we understand who you are now. Then we go a step further and we say, okay, so let's take the things that you want and let's reverse engineer them. And this is another framework within the framework, but we start at the end and we say, okay, what is the goal? All right, just for simplicity, say on December 31st or sooner, 2025 or sooner, I'm going to be celebrating booking a trip to the Caribbean, let's just say. My next question is, what has to happen in the second before you accomplish that? Like, how do you know you're there? What would have to happen before you could pick up the phone and call me and say, oh my God, I'm going, blah, blah, blah. Well, in this instance, it would be, well, I got the confirmation that the flights were booked, the villa was booked, whatever it is, like came in my email, it came in a text and I saw that. That's the moment that we kind of hold on to. And then there's two things we do. Number one, we micro-step backwards all the way back till today by answering the question, what has to happen just before that? What has to happen just before that? All the way back to today, because traditional goal setting, and the reason why 95% of people never actually do them, and then we have more story that we don't finish what we start, and we don't da-da-da-da-da, and we, blame and complain and justify and put ourselves down, is going forward from here to there, we miss 75 or 80% of the most important steps because the unconscious man can't fill in the blank that way. But micro-stepping backwards is a completely different situation. And then we take it a step further. Since we've done timeline work already, now we go install that on your future timeline so that your brain experiences that moment of the second before you know you achieved it in all the senses. What do you see? What do you feel? What do you hear? What's going on? Because the brain doesn't know the difference between something that has actually happened, right? Or something that's really visualized with the emotions attached. And that ignites the reticular activating system in the brain, which now becomes laser focused, looking for the people, the resources, the opportunities, the experiences that you need to make sure that this actually happens, instead of spending the rest of your life just longing for it and never getting there. And then we get to move into the claim phase. And this is where we really own it and integrate it and embody it, right? And when we own it, like you talked about this earlier about, needing all of that external permission and validation, like you don't need that anymore. And this is where you really actually get to fall in love with yourself again and trust yourself and hold boundaries and communicate your needs, and then really deepen the richness in every single one of your relationships. And then we integrate that into your energy, your decisions, your relationships, your life. And then you get to embody her, right? Living from this higher frequency and just living and leading and loving from this version of you that's clear and no longer performing for things that aren't who you are and don't matter. And, it's kind of like, just out of curiosity, what's your favorite music?
Well, I am not a favorites person. I don't have a favorite.
Okay, give me a genre of music you love.
Oh, geez. Jazz.
Okay, and a genre of music you don't love.
There's not. I mean,
Least favorite.
I'm not a favorites person. I think it's a neurodivergent thing. I love everything so much, and I have like genres of things for different times and different places.
Okay.
I struggle to find, especially with music, I struggle to find anything I don't really like.
Okay.
Maybe like, I don't know, Tuvan throat singing. I wouldn't just bump it in the car.
What kind of singing?
Tuvan throat singing. Have you ever heard it?
I don't even know what that is, but that's okay. I don't have to know. So here's the point. Everything that you want for yourself, your business, your life, love, all of it is hanging out on station 111, Sirius XM. It's all jazz, right? It's fabulous. But right now, you're stuck on that Tuvan throat singing, and it's like station 60, and you can't turn it off. You can't even turn it down, and it's so loud, and it's all the time. Can you hear jazz on that Tuvan throat situation station?
No.
Absolutely not. It's impossible. So what do you have to do? Well, you have to change the channel. And how do you do that? You raise your frequency, because we don't get what we want. We get who we are. And it's such an important concept of understanding that, consciously we might think we're hanging out up here in love and gratitude and appreciation and joy, but where are you hanging out unconsciously? Fear, anger, victimhood, resentment? So understanding that, and more importantly, understanding that this is not about skipping over emotion and not having emotion and having this toxic positive nonsense. It's about not staying there. How do you get yourself out of it faster? How do you choose a better feeling thought? How do you recognize it? Because you're not going to recognize it unless you're really conscious. And so I do some things with my clients. It's over 72 hours, and you actually get to rewire your thought process. And it changes everything. And, it only takes 17 seconds of holding a thought with emotion to either create new neural pathways or reinforce the ones that are already there. Back to our example of what directions are we putting in our nervous system. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of how the process flows from all three of those phases.
Awesome. So looping this back to love and the challenges that high achieving women face when they are looking for love or looking for relationships, what are some shifts that they notice after they've been through this process?
Well, it's quite magical in the sense that it's not even through it. It's like the first time we have a conversation, things start shifting. And then the next conversation is where we actually get really clear about what you don't want and what you do want. And I call it your away wall and your toward wall. And we do this 72-hour experiment, if you will. So my values as a person and for my business are love, generosity, impact, belief in what's possible, and being a magnet for miracles. And that's my favorite thing to teach. So rather than seeing the world like all men are like this, or all people that I am interested in are like this, and I never find a parking spot when it's raining, and I always get the last table at the, like, and a lot of that is just unconscious. We all know those people, right? And it's understanding that, again, what you're focusing on is all you're going to continue to get. So we have to flip that focus from that away wall thinking, which is everything you don't want, to your toward wall thinking, which is everything that you do. And that shift in and of itself begins the change. Because if you think about your physical life and everything in it that's tangible, love, relationships, your dog, your car, your career, your money, whatever, it's like a cake. And if you bake a cake, and the cake doesn't taste good, how are you going to bake a better cake? You're going to look at the ingredients, right? And so if the cake is our physical, and all of us are governed by 4 states, right? Physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual. Then the mental, emotional, spiritual are the ingredients. So what do we need to deal with over here to make that cake better? So it's that same concept of anything that you want, anything that's not working for you in the way in which it could or should. I guarantee it's starting around, what are you focusing on? Where are your thoughts? Where are you on any given day? And so with the clarity, and then with being able to flip that, and then being able to move into like some patterns and cycles that go, oh, wow, right? That's crazy. That's interesting. And then what do we want now? And really creating it together and co-creating it. So I had clients that, okay, let me tell you about Christiane. She's in New York. So I want you to imagine the most stereotypical Italian New Yorker, tall, gorgeous, dark hair, like passionate. And she had been going through a divorce for quite some time. She has 2 kids. One was graduating high school. One was, the daughter's a little younger. And she had been in a relationship that had just ended like for a year. And when she and I started working together, she had a lot of anger, and she was doing things like she kept a secret album on her phone of like photos and text messages from the relationship that just ended. And that's like torture. Like she would go back and ruminate on like, what if this was different? And maybe I could compromise on that. And maybe it wasn't such a big deal, but she had no idea what her non-negotiables, her values and her desires were. Cause she was always like, oh, maybe this is it for me. Maybe this is the best it's going to get. Maybe I should put myself into this box that fits what they want. And in a very short amount of time, she knew she had her menu. She knew within seconds if somebody even got an opportunity to be in her world. She also knew that she didn't have to just let herself be fully taken over by these people, because the men that she would attract, they would want to then see her every day and monopolize her time and attention. And she felt like she had to do that. And she was pretty angry. So I don't know, 4 weeks in or so when we've been working together, she had a Friday happy hour date with her 2 girlfriends from college. At one point they said to her, like, we need to ask you a question. She's like, yeah, what's up? And they're like, are you on drugs? And she's like, what? Why? Well, you're much nicer. You're so much calmer. And usually you show up here and you're bitching and complaining about, the ex-husband and all the things. And like, you're talking about your ideas and you're excited for stuff. And it just is really weird. And so for her, that external feedback was wild. And then as we kept going, and as far as what she was looking for, what's next outside of just the relationship piece, was she had an idea for a dream job. She had just finished another degree, and she wanted to work with adolescents in the mental health space. And wherever it is that she lives in New York, there's nothing in that area. Like she would have to go an hour away. So we did that. We reverse engineered that goal, installed it on a Monday. And she called me on a Thursday and she said, you're never going to believe me, but I just got an offer for a job that didn't exist to open a practice 5 minutes from my house. And so just all of those shifts for her that happened inside of weeks, which she's like, this is crazy. Like I've spent years in therapy and no movement, because we're not focusing on, again, all the drama and doing things the same way and expecting things to be different. So it's not something that we have to drag on for years and years.
That's awesome. Riana, it's so lovely to talk with you. If people want to experience this work for themselves, where can they find you? Where are you online?
Absolutely. So my website, rianamalia.com, all the socials at Riana Malia, Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn. And then I also just want to leave this with your listeners. So I'd love to give you the gift of the ELI. So the ELI is a diagnostic that we've created. It stands for the Extraordinary Love Index. And it answers the question, what's standing between you and extraordinary love? And that can be romantic love. It can be self-love. It really looks at kind of 9 key areas. And it is not the, what Disney princess are you? It's 40 questions. So I ask that when you take it, like give yourself a good 10, 15 minutes to really be able to answer it thoughtfully. Because then I'm going to send you a 28-page report about what all of your answers and what's going on. And it's going to say, you might be experiencing this. This is the cost of staying here. Here's something you can do right now to help shift out of that space. And so it is insight that everyone should have. And if you go to the website or anywhere you go, you can just find it. But if you go to the website, it'll pop up and it says, take the ELI. But go give that gift to yourself, no matter where you are in life, in relationship status, in any of it. It's going to give you insight that you've never had that will actually change your world.
Thank you. I love it so much. And everyone around here, anyone who's into personal development and self-help loves a quiz. We want to know what kind of sandwich we are. Yeah. We want to know all of our personality types. We want to know our astrological big 3, our human design. Everyone here wants to know all the things. So I'm sure they're going to be so excited to take an assessment. Because I know I am. I was like, I'll go take it right when we're done. Yeah. So I will put the link for that in the show notes as well. Riana, thank you so much for being here. And everybody go follow Riana, check out her work, and maybe dive in and go through this process for yourself if it is speaking to you. Bye.
Thank you.
That's our episode for today. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this. I know there are so many things that you could be doing with your day, so many things you could be listening to, and it means so much that you are here in this community. If you enjoyed this episode, please take a moment, share it on social media, and tag me at Intuitive Edge Coaching. Share it with a biz bestie who you think needs to hear it and will appreciate it. And take a moment to to subscribe, and to leave a 5-star review wherever you are listening. It helps me grow this show, and it helps us grow and sustain this brilliant community of entrepreneurs dedicated to doing the inner work. Thank you so much for being here. Okay, love you. Bye.